Hello. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Desmos graphing tool to do a couple of interesting things that you may find helpful working on homework problems and explorations in this course, but also just to give you a little bit of the behind-the-scenes look at how I create some of the graphing tools and images that we'll use in our class notes and in these videos. So this example, I have a function defined up here, and notice how I didn't just type the formula, negative 16x squared plus 48x, I typed a function, and I declared it to be f of x equals that function. And the reason for doing that is that later on I get to do things like, you see down here, I have f of 3 typed. The Desmos tool knows that I'm referring to the f of x function up here, and so when I type f of 3, it can automatically plug in x equals 3 and calculate things for me. The next row that I have here is a point, and I've labeled it p, and given the specific coordinates 3, 0. And notice how in the graph it has the coordinates 3, 0 labeled. If I toggle that label check mark, that turns the coordinates being shown on and off. By the way, I can turn the whole point off by tapping on that little thing right there. But interestingly, notice how it still labels the coordinates. I didn't realize that. I can turn the whole graph off by clicking back and forth on that thing as well, if you want to do that. I've turned this line off here temporarily, because I'll come back to what that means later. I've decided m equals negative 48. If you watch that first video, you'll know the significance of that number and why that m shows up in that formula there for the tangent line, but we'll get back to that later. And then down here, I have an expression called s. And it's not quite a function. I'm kind of defining a formula. And you can see how it says f of a minus f of 3 over a minus 3. That looks like the rise over run. That looks like the slope of a line. And indeed, what this is calculating is the slope of the line between 2 points. One of the points is 3 comma f of 3, or point P. That's the one on the bottom right that you see in the graph. And the other point must be a comma f of a. And in fact, that's what I have defined down here as q. I guess I should have turned on the labeling of that one. And so what this expression s is finding is the slope of the line between the 2 points that are marked in the graph. And you can see that it outputs s equals negative 24. It'll calculate that for me automatically. And now, the reason I set all this up is that I want to explore what happens to that expression, that value for s, as I make one of the points get close to x equals 3. And there's a couple ways to do that. I chose the value of a, and I just picked 1.5 to start with. And so that's why in this expression up here for s, it doesn't give me an error. It knows that a is 1.5. It doesn't matter that it's the second row after that. It still knows within the whole tool that a is 1.5, so that's what it's plugging in here. Now, there's a couple ways to change that. If I drag the slider bar for a back and forth, you can see I'm changing the number value for a. Notice how it's also changing the output for s. So one of the values that we calculated in the video earlier was a equals 2. If I dragged it over there, we found that the average speed of the ball from 2 seconds to 3 seconds was negative 32 meters per second. That's exactly what the output of s is right here. It's telling me the slope of that purple line between the 2 points. So dragging the slider bar for a will automatically update all the expressions that are based on a, and it changes the picture. So that's one way to change a. Another way I could do it is just to straight up type in a specific number. So I could type here, I want a to be 2.085. I could do something like that, and then it will automatically put that over there. That's something you could do. Another thing you can do is just to click and drag on the actual point in the graph instead of playing with the expressions on the left. Right now I'm clicking and I'm dragging the point that's been called Q. I'm dragging that left and right. I'm not dragging the slider bar A. I know you can't see where I'm clicking on my cursor, but I'm telling you what I'm doing right now so that you know how to do this yourself. And then finally down there, the last expression in purple, that's how I got the line graphed. This is the so-called point slope form of a line. I want one of the y coordinates of the point of a point on the line to be f of 3, and the corresponding input to be 3, and then I have s there as the slope, because that's what it's calculating as the slope between those 2 points. So this is really just the point-slope form of a line. I trust that that's something you've worked with before in an algebra course in the past. Alright, so at least now I've shown you how to graph things, set up some expressions that depend on each other. Oh, by the way, remember I picked negative 48. That was because it's the slope of the tangent line. We're about to get to that too, because the other thing I did in the video was say I can show you how to use Desmos to do a lot of calculations for yourself, because we were calculating a bunch of slopes of these lines. So this is one way to do it. You can see that I can just set up an expression like this, and I can drag the point over here to 2, and see what s turns out to be. I can make it 2.5, I can make it 2.9, and I could just keep looking at the output for s. And that's great for exploring, it's great for getting a visual look at what's going on, but I also want to be able to just look at maybe a table of numbers, be able to see a whole bunch of information at once instead of having to drag the point A back and forth. So here's something you can do. I'm going to open up a new line down here, and that little plus sign up in the very top left of your screen that you see there, that plus means add something new. Now I can just start typing. I can type, like x squared, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But if I want to add a different type of thing, you want to click that plus. When I click that here, I want to choose not expression, that's the other stuff I've been typing, like a formula or coordinates of a point, things like that. And it's not a note. That's something where you can type text as a note for yourself. So just, can you describe in the line below this, this is what it means, blah, blah, blah. I want to add a table. I'm going to click table. Now notice it does something automatically. It creates a column called x1. It creates a column called y1, and it has a little green circle with some dots in it. It almost looks like a bowling ball with an extra thumb hole. Here's what this means. The left column labeled x1, I get to type things in there. Like I'm going to put 1, and then the next row 1.5, and 2, and 2.5, and then 2.9. Maybe you see why I'm picking these numbers. These I'm going to use as x-coordinates of specifically those values of a that we were exploring in the first video. Now I want this expression on the right over here to be the corresponding value of s that I typed. So I'm going to start typing that expression, except instead of a, I'm going to type x1, because then Desmos will know that the column on the left here is the value that I want to be plugging in. So I'm going to say f of x. Now to get the subscript, I have to go down here and click on the a sub b, and then make that a 1, and move to the right. And you can see it's starting to plot stuff, but it's not what I want to do. It's plugging x1 into the function, because all I've typed so far is f of x1. So you can see it's plotting a bunch of dots that are along the curve. Then I want to say minus f of 3. That's the other point. And then I want to divide that whole thing. I want to get a fraction. But notice if I hit divide here, it's going to only divide f of 3. I got a order of operations issue. So here's the way to get around that. You want to click and highlight the whole thing. You see how everything I've typed so far is highlighted? Now if I hit the divides sign, it'll make a fraction where all of that junk's in the top of the fraction, in the numerator. And then make x1 minus 3. And these are the values of the slopes of the secant lines that we were calculating in the video. Now notice how there's this stray point over here, 1, negative 16. It's plotting something on the graph because of the table that I just set up, where when x1 was 1, the right-hand column was negative 16. So Desmos thinks what I'm doing is creating another function. And, maybe I want to do that later, but right now I don't really want to do that. I don't want to see these things plotted. I just want to get a table of info. So that's what clicking on that green little bowling ball with the finger hole shape will do. It'll toggle that off. You can turn off that being plotted, because that's not really what I want to see. So now I can start to go and add new rows in my table. Whoops, missed a decimal point. 2.99, then 2.999. And look at that. Those numbers seem to be getting closer and closer to negative 48. And that's exactly what we saw and discussed in the video earlier. So these are some things you can do with Desmos. We'll get into more detail about these and other things throughout the course, but hopefully this is a quick little introduction to some of the features that are available to you.